Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tenitra. Coming up on today's show, Grady Jarrett sees the plan. Anthopoulos has done it again. And last but not least, and for the culture. So you saying there's a chance? It's all coming up next right here on ATL Day Ones. Let's go.
This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
I want to start off by saying thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen of the day. Remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. And wherever you download your podcast, make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. Really appreciate that from you in advance. This episode of ATL Day Ones is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It is the official sportsbook for Locked On. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. ATL Day Ones is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But Jamie, when you think about the Falcons going through their OTAs and getting ready to hit those mandatory mini camps and here pretty soon, I think one of the things that T and I have talked about on this show is the fact that, you know, when you look at what the Falcons, what's new to this Falcons team is a lot of new pieces on this Falcons defensive side of the football. But one thing that I've kind of honed in on now is the fact that Ryan Nielsen is the defensive coordinator for this team. And Ryan Nielsen used to be a defensive line coach. And the Atlanta Falcons have had so many issues at getting to the quarterback. It just seems like they haven't been able to do it. Now, with all these additional pieces and Ryan Nielsen now as the defensive coordinator, given his background as a defensive line coach, do you feel like he can elevate this defense for this year and play up to par where at least where our expectations are, and for the Falcons brass as well?
Look at where he came from. As much as we hate that group, you know, we're not gonna talk too much about them.
Right.
But you have to give them their you have to give them their props, man. You know, their defensive line play has been up to standard, man. And so as a coordinator and Ryan Nielsen being able to come over to this franchise and kind of implement what he's done there, I think he can take it next level, because I think any coordinator that wants to leave their mark on a team and take that next ascension, I think full well that he will impact this tremendously. I think when you look at, you know, even the head coaches to a degree, if you look back at Dan Quinn, Mike Smith, they were coordinators. They were highly regarded coordinators. Mm-hmm. So I think the talent of the brain trust of you know, the Falcons franchise in general can pick out talent, whether it be coordinators or head coaches that have been able to galvanize the team. So I think it is a right move. I think he can take this D-line to the next level, especially when it comes to talking about having sacks. We've been talking about that problem for years when it comes to this franchise. You know, everyone's, you know, suggested something we could do, bring in people in this, that, and the third. And so I think, you know, with the pedigree that Terry Fontenot has established, he knows Ryan Nielsen, he knows his capabilities. I think we have to give them time to kind of mesh and gel with this franchise. And I think they both want to make impressions. So I think, yes, the eagerness and the willingness to be good, I think carries them over. But along with that, just the personnel that they brought in from that franchise that he already knows. You know, I know we're gonna touch on this a little bit later, but I think they've gone in a really good direction to improve that defense in general.
Absolutely, and I'm with you on that, because oftentimes, a lot of times, you can really tell what type of effect a coach can have on a particular defense and how his veterans respond to him, how they talk about him. And one of the things that I thought that really stood out to me with Grady Jarrett when he spoke to the media on Friday down in Mercedes-Benz, it was the fact that he talked about how intense Ryan Nielsen was. That means that Nielsen has already had an effect on him, and he kind of looking into his eyes and saying, "Hey, man, here where your eyes are." You know, like he's really a detailed type of guy. When you talk about where Grady Jarrett's eyes are on this particular play. Like, where are you supposed to be looking? Why aren't you looking this way? Here's why you're supposed to be looking that way. Those are some of the things the details that help guys like Grady Jarrett, who's a veteran, who's been in the league going into his 9th year of the season and coming off a year where he had 7 sacks. That's how he gets better. Like the little fine, minute things that Ryan Nielsen has to be able to point out in order for a veteran like Grady to take it to that next level. And I think that's a very good sign, right? Because I know I had my reservations about getting the first-time defensive coordinator because Dennis Allen, called the plays. And Nielsen was the co-defensive coordinator because Allen knew that more than likely some team was going to come and call him because of what he did with that defensive line. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far with the veterans and how they responded, specifically Grady Jarrett, because, hey, he's the guy. I know Calais Campbell's been in the league for a long time and all that stuff, but Grady is the guy that's been in this locker room, and he's been in this locker room for quite some time, and he has the respect of pretty much everyone in that locker room. So if he's starting to feel the effect already, that means that I'm not as concerned as I was, but obviously I'm still going to have my eyes on it, and I think that Nielsen's going to be a guy that that more than likely is going to have an effect on his team if he's already starting to do so in the spring. Now, like you mentioned, the New Orleans Saints, I'm going to go ahead and say it just this one time so everybody knows who we're talking about. That's one time, and that's my first and last time. David Onyemata was a guy who was brought in. And I think that when you think about David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett combining to play with each other, I start to get a little excited because those guys are pretty much cut from the same cloth when you talk about being underestimated, coming out of college and everything, not necessarily being the first-round draft pick, coming in, starting right away and all that stuff. So one thing that I thought was pretty cool, Grady Jarrett was on the Green Light podcast. The Long brother.
Yeah, it's Chris Long.
Chris Long's podcast called the Green Light Podcast. So he mentioned how glad he was to play with David Onyemata because he knows that he can come in and play right away and not have to worry about the learning curve with a high-round draft pick. Do you think that's why Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith loaded up with the veterans on that side of the football? Because they know, hey, they're trying to get to the playoffs and they don't have time to necessarily develop a guy on the defensive side of football because they know pretty much things are going to be rolling on that offensive side, so they need defense to come along as well.
I think that's exactly what the plan was. If you look at how they drafted, they got players on the defensive end who can come in and probably spell players, but with the amount of free agents they brought in that were already pretty much tailor-made to play right now. The players they drafted can, sit behind these players and actually look and develop while winning. This is the third year of the Arthur Smith regime, Terry Fontenot regime. Mm-hmm. They got to win this year. Yeah, they got to show some signs of improvement, of taking that next step with this brain trust, because the fan base is impatient. They want to know what's going on. They see those offensive pieces. So you need veterans. You picked up, we talked about Onyemata already, Calais Campbell being able to come in and I still say it goes a long way to just think about Calais Campbell choosing the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. Now, whether or not you can, you want to go down that line a little bit and say, well, maybe it's the money, maybe it's this, you don't know where he was offered elsewhere. No, I think when you've already been a winner, I think when you choose a franchise who says we're going to win, I think, I think
you can smell it.
Absolutely. The confidence that this coaching staff and front office has to take that next ascension, and I think the division is tailor-made to win this year. I think that was absolutely the game plan. And as mad as some people were that, they didn't pick the likes of Jalen Carter,
still a little salty about that one.
Included.
Yeah, I'm one. I was leading that charge. Still quietly, I'm quiet as kept. You know what, Jamie? Just real quick. Now that I think about it, I'm sitting up here kind of like trying to be as quiet as possible, man, because I've been hearing nothing but amazing things coming out of Philadelphia about how that man has been performing since he's been up there. I know they haven't put on the pads yet, but I think it says something if they are already chirping about Philadelphia getting the steal and they ain't even put the pads on yet, I think we know what to expect once they put the pads on. So yeah,
we're gonna find out some things, and we better win. No. The Falcons better win. They better win because you got to justify that pick. But I think, it just goes to what the game plan was, and I can respect the game plan because
no doubt.
You're putting your job on the line. You have to go with a philosophy. You can't be wishy-washy. You have to make a decision and stick to that decision. So that is the route they're going. I think Grady Jarrett is exactly right when it comes to this, because when you're coming in, new defensive coordinator, and the attention to detail that you already talked about, I think it's different, especially in the last 2 years, different than they've been accustomed to, because the scheme, especially under Dan Quinn, was simple. Run and hit. Simple concepts. If it's attention to detail and it's something that you haven't done before, because clearly in the last few years it hadn't worked.
No.
You need all that you can get, and bringing in players that is accustomed to that system is absolutely what they need. So Grady's spot on with that.
Yeah, and I think that Grady and Yamada has the potential to be a special inside combination, because a lot of times, like, everybody always talk about the bookends, right? About who's on either side. I know one of the ones, first thing that comes to mind when I think about bookends is Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. Like, those guys were amazing on third and long, and I was like, it was just a sight to see. So I think that we have guys like Grady Jarrett, like you said, coming off a really good season last year, having to be versatile. All of playing up and down the defensive line. Being he was playing in that multiple defense. I think that he has the opportunity to go back home where he went 0-3 technique, and then have a guy that almost essentially is built just like him from a mindset standpoint. I think this thing, that combination has the potential to be really, really special. All right, but coming up next, though, like, T and I always have talked about Alex Anthopoulos' greatness. I think we have to do it again. He's done it again, folks, and we'll talk about that next. But first, we got to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It is the #1 sportsbook in America, because guess what, guys? Like, the NBA playoffs are here. The NBA finals, happened yesterday. Did you win some money or did you lose some money? But guess what? Here's the thing. What we have right here, right now, just for you, new FanDuel customers. You have the no sweat first bet, and that's up to $2,500 if your first bet doesn't win. That's your bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Only to new customers. Now, if you've already been rocking with us, continue to do so. But if you are a new customer and you come to FanDuel, make sure that you go to FanDuel and test out that FanDuel thing, because guess what, guys? I know a lot of times you talked about how, you worry about information getting out there. It's safe and secure. They have promotions every day when you go onto the website. And guess what? You don't have to wait for your money. You get paid instantly. So there's no better place. Bet all the playoff action right there. America's #1 sportsbook. So what I want you to do is make sure that you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Now, Jamie, we talked about the Falcons and how, David Onyemata and Grady Jarrett has the potential to be special. But I think there is a special person already in this city, and he is the front office person, the big wig, the big man making all the decisions in the front office. His name is Alex Anthopoulos. And I think he just continues to prove that he has the best front office in baseball. Last night, A.J. Smith-Shawver made his debut, and the 20-year-old did not disappoint. How about this? Smith-Shawver retired 7 out of the 8 batters that he faced. How cool? Let me ask you this, because, you've been in this city for a long time, Jamie, and you cover all these teams, all the professional sports teams for just as long. How cool is it to just know that the general manager, the person making all the personnel decisions, knows exactly what he's doing?
We've had that a long time because regionally, and of course, no, I'm not originally from Atlanta, but when it comes to the Atlanta Braves, they're not just the city; they're regional.
Yeah,
They just are. You know, with
the Southeastern.
Yes, their inception,
the SEC of baseball,
Turner,
basically.
all of that. So,
Yes.
so understanding what the '90s Braves were with that, you know, with coach, GM, and so on, we know what that's like. Now we know it fell off for a tad bit, but under Alex Anthopoulos, Brian Snitker, man, listen, if you don't trust in AA, you something's wrong with you, man. Because listen, we just go and find players.
Yeah.
They sign very team-friendly contracts.
Yeah.
And they are able to spot talent. I know there was a period of time where, you know, the farm system was depleted just based on what the team was trying to do.
Right.
But I tell you what, in the last few years, especially under Anthopoulos, man, you can see they can spot talent. They make deals that are team friendly. You know, and obviously players want to play for this franchise. And so when you're talking about someone new being able to come up and pitch, we've talked about the injuries all year. And yes, they've impacted them greatly. But
Absolutely.
when you're talking about the back half of the year, just watch this team for a second. You know, because the same thing happened last year, year before, you know, starting off great, you know, had some rough patches in late May, you know, early June. You know, you saw what the series was against the Oakland A's, you know, wasn't our finest hours. But at the same time, you can see just finding players, finding those diamonds in the rough. You can see what Smith-Shawver has been able to do so far. And just in a magical performance right there, you can see the potential in what he's able to do. And again, we don't know who's going to come up. Once this team gets fully healthy, you know, once you have Max Fried come back and just players that have been injured, we're also starting to hit the ball. You know, say Eddie Rosario starting to do his thing. You know, Ozzie Albies is starting to do his thing as well. So when you're talking about this team being full bear, or just being at their full complement of players, along with players that AA is discovering in this system that we have, they're not worried. The fan base often worries, like, we need to go get an arm. We need to go get an arm. And that very well may still happen. But trust in AA. Just be patient. You know, kind of like, the Aaron Rodgers. Relax. It's going to be okay. AA got it. Trust in AA.
Yes, trust him right now, because he is like a AA battery. Just keep going and going and going and going and going. And I think that, like, this Smith-Shawver kind of is eerily similar to a guy like Spencer Strider, because, you know, he started out in the bullpen and he was just throwing gas all over the place. And then Smith-Shawver is kind of doing it like, too. I don't want to put any pressure on the man, but he reminds me of that, man. He's a guy that's been brought in to have, you know, to do long relief. You know what I'm saying? And we know the Braves need that right now, because Jesse Chavez is kind of filling that role. And, you know, Jesse, he getting up there in age, and he ain't necessarily the guy to be going multiple innings at this point in his career. So, yeah, man, shout out to AA for continuing to find these guys. And if Smith-Shawver ends up being in that starter rotation, I would not be surprised by the end of the year. So
wouldn't be surprised at all.
Absolutely. Now, there was another thing that went down last night with the Atlanta Braves. We kind of find out that, you know, Marcell Ozuna got benched because he, hit a nice long shot, right? And, you know, the way he was looking at it, he thought it was going out of the park. But it ended up staying in, and the dude ended up only getting a single. And come to some situations and everything like that, he ended up on third base. And more than likely, if he had done what he was supposed to do, which was probably get a double, at least, you know, he probably would end up scoring. So, but in the end, like you mentioned earlier, with Eddie Rosario hitting that grand slam and at the top of the ninth, he didn't necessarily lose the game because of that. But it is one of those things that Brian Snitker said, you know what? Hey, man, you need to sit your butt down somewhere. And Sean Murphy came in and subbed in for him at DH. But do you think that was the right decision, though?
I think it's the right decision when it comes to Ozuna in general. You got to think about what's been going on the last few years, man. And,
a lot.
And
non-baseball related, too.
Listen, you know what I'm saying? You're not Ronald Acuna. You're not that guy.
Yeah.
And he's been injured, but he has a style and flair that people like, but also you can see his maturity, taking place as well and I think, you can kind of give credit to that in the kind of season he's having. But when it comes to Ozuna, man, you just gotta, Brian Snitker has done a great job in bridging who he is. You got to talk about a Braves lifer that's been in this system, 30, 40 years.
Yeah. At least.
And so he's an old school manager.
No doubt.
He's done a good job in knowing who his players are. But when you do something like that and you don't hustle, oh yeah, you know it's coming. And I'm sure Ozuna understands as well. You can, do a little bit of showboating, but you got to understand your place when it comes to certain stuff. And I'm not just talking about, just him as a player in general, but just the history in things that have gone on. And he's, improving as of late as well. Like, give him his credit. But at the same time, you're trying to win ball games. You're trying to get this team back on track. Hey, do what you're supposed to do, especially when it comes to the old school rules of baseball.
Yeah, that was one of those rules where I don't mind it being enforced because, like you said, like, dude, like, I understand, like, trust me, like, as a person who loves when cats doggone, doing their little dance, coming around the bases and everything like that, but when you don't know for a fact that bad boy is out of there, like, you need to be running, dude, because like the ball was in the air for 6 seconds. Like, that is an eternity, in sports. You know what I mean? So I think that, yeah, I think, and I like you mentioned how he's been doing well. Like, he batted he had over 1,000 OPS in the month of May, and there's more than likely, Chucker has been talking about on his show on Hitting Hard about the dude might get Player of the Month for the month of May. So I think it was a matter of, Marcel's starting to get a little comfortable, like, oh, I'm doing my thing now, and everything back to normal. Nah, Jack, like, don't get comfortable. I'm glad that Snitker kind of brought him back down. Like, come on back down to earth a little bit. We understand you've been doing your thing on the field, but that doesn't mean that you can start hot dogging and pimping shots and everything like that, because like ballparks are built differently. Like, that probably would have been out in Truist Park, but like parks are built differently, so you can't assume that bad boy is going to go out like that. And even if you did for a couple seconds, I'm like, oh shoot, that bad boy might not come in. You might need to take off running, and I think that the Snitker kind of brought him back down to earth, and I really, really appreciate him for that. So now, Ozuna, stop smelling yourself, as the old folks used to say, and keep your head down and keep working. That's my advice to you, and my advice to all the listeners of ATL Day Ones. Guess what, y'all? We appreciate y'all. Like, all my guys, Archangel and Mr. 404 out there saying they're everydayers. If you're an everydayer, we appreciate you guys coming and rocking with us each and every day. Like you said, like, you can do just like Archangel did, or just like Slim Pickens did. They dropped those comments in the comment box right there. Just let us know you are an everydayer, and we really appreciate you. And we might give you a shout out on the show as well. Get your name out there. You might become famous by being mentioned on our show. You never know. And if you're everydayer, you might be a day oneer. If you've been here since day one on ATL Day Ones, we might have to come up with something special for y'all, because y'all been rocking with us for over a year, and we really appreciate you guys just for that. But Jamie, this is For the Culture. It is the intersection between sports, entertainment, the culture, and sometimes whatever the hell we want to talk about, because that's just how we get down on this show. Today is no different. Last night, Jimmy Buckets, excuse me. His name was Jimmy Buckets last night. And Bam Adebayo, they got their win on last night, 111-108. Jamal Murray tried to tie the ball game up in the last couple seconds, Jamie, but it did not work. Now you know where I'm about to go with this one, because I, for one, have said on this show that I feel like the Nuggets are going to win this series. I didn't say a sweep, because I feel like Miami is a gritty team. They're, these guys fight, scratch, and claw, and all that stuff, underrated, all that good stuff. These dudes will find a way to at least get one win. But to you, after watching the game last night, do you feel like they have a chance?
I think anytime you have Jimmy Buckets, Jimmy Butler is a gamer, man. He's an absolute warrior.
Absolutely.
As Mike Malone described him before they got into the series. I think you always have a chance, but I think if you look at that roster top to bottom, Denver is definitely the most talented. Jamal Murray has been incredible coming off his injury, man.
Yeah.
Like he is ascended into a top 10 player in the league. And of course, everyone Jokic is phenomenal. One of the
two-time, maybe should have been three-time MVP.
It should have been three. It should have been three. I think we were all out our heads for a second. And don't get me wrong, Joel Embiid, played well. But
I'm not snatching a trophy from Joel Embiid because he had a hell of a season. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think when you're talking about whether or not they have a chance, I think Denver takes the series in 6. But there is a puncher's chance for Miami because Miami is an anomaly. They lose to the Hawks in the play-in. You know what I'm saying? They lose to the Hawks in the play-in.
That seems like it was a year ago.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking, okay, this team packed it in. They ready to go to Cancun. All the bells and whistles.
Right.
But give Jimmy Butler credit and give Eric Spoelstra. Man, look, I think as much credit as he does get, he doesn't get enough. Because I think it's very easy to say you can win championships with the likes of LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and others.
Dwayne Wade,
and Ray Allen. But they've been they have a winning culture. So much so that the control freak that is Pat Riley has relinquished the team to him. This is Eric Spoelstra's team. Pat is, he's a closer.
Yeah.
You talk about Pat, slick back hair. He's the closer at this point. This is Eric Spoelstra's team. So I think they'll always be in it. But if you look at that roster, just again, top to bottom, the likes of Vincent, Strus, playing with an old Kevin Love. This team, they're gritty, they fight, they are a reflection of their coach. But I don't think the talent really gets you over the Denver hump. Because Denver, top to bottom, that starting 5 is phenomenal. So yeah, they got a chance, man. And I'll never say something surprises me, but I think this is Denver's to lose still, even with it being tied 1-1.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting how Eric Spoelstra game planned in this second game because this is one of the things that I've always been enamored by when we talk about a 7-game series are the adjustments, right? Like what type of adjustments are you going to be able to make? And then for, Spoelstra to go with Kevin Love to start the game and then, for Duncan Robinson and Kyle Lowry being able to come off the bench and do what they do. It was just amazing to kind of see how those things play out because Joker, he had a hell of a game. He dropped 41, had 11 rebounds, only 4 assists. And a lot of people are pointing towards that. Like, okay, let Joker go off for drop 40. Cool. You just kind of make sure you pay attention to the guys that, the other guys. I hate to kind of say that because these guys are in the NBA and they're in the best league in the entire world. But, that's kind of what they are in comparison to, the likes of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. So I think that we have got like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Michael Porter Jr. have off nights. And guess what? The other guys for the Miami Heat, they balled out. And that's why these are the differences in the game because it's hard to kind of carry teams like everybody say, how like, Mike carried the team by himself. He won 6 championships by himself. Well, no, he didn't. No, he had guys like Scottie Pippen, who was a hell of a player. And, and he's a Hall of Famer player, and he had guys like Dennis Rodman, who just all he cared was about getting rebounds. Like, you know what I'm saying? So when you have nights where Dennis Rodman don't do what he's supposed to do, or Scottie Pippen don't do what he's supposed to do, it's gonna be tough. And I think that's what happened to the Denver Nuggets last night. Like when you have your other guys not doing what they're supposed to do and understand what their roles are and not executing, that's what happened. I think, and I think that I just don't think that that's going to happen 3 more times. Like that's how I look at this series. But I think it's the series, like you said, it's still going to be with the Denver Nuggets. I think it's still going to go their way. But because I just don't, the way that this team is so well coached, like you mentioned, like Eric Spoelstra, how great of a coach he is. Michael Malone needs his credit too because these guys are a machine, man. When they're on, this team is hard to stop. So I'm very interested to see how long the series goes and how many times we're going to say, hey, Jimmy them pulled it out. You know how the old folks say, Jimmy them going to be able to pull that bad boy out. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that. And also, guys, we want to say thank you for making ATL Day One your first listen today. Remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast and wherever you download your podcast. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review. That's how we get found out. That's how people find out about what we have going on right here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. And to our everydayers, we thank you. We appreciate you. And go ahead and flex on them and drop a comment in that comment box. Really appreciate you in advance. And last but not least, before we get out of here, first of all, I got to say, Jamie, thank you for filling in for Tenitra today. And guys, Tenitra will be back tomorrow. I always got to remind the folks of that, Jamie, because, you know, folks, they love themselves, Tenitra Batiste. But, yeah, man, appreciate you locking in with me today.
No problem, my man.
My man. And also, guys, before we get out of here, we always got to make sure that you guys, if you don't do anything else before you leave, make sure that you share love, show love, and most importantly, spread love.